which is dirty thunderstorms. Okay, these things aren't called dirty because they're a bit rude. Now, this thing might look like a portal to hell, but it's actually formed when electrical charges are generated inside a volcanic plume. Rock, ash and ice particles collide and build up static electricity. And if enough static electricity builds up, it comes crashing down and you end up with pictures like the one behind me. Pretty mental. Lightning and volcanoes are a great way to start off this video, but now it's time for our number 9, which is the Christmas Island crabs. Once a day, every year, something very special happens on Christmas Island in the Indian Ocean. No, I'm not talking about Christmas, I'm talking about the red crab migration. Every single year, about 43 million of these migrate across the island to lay their eggs in the ocean. Now, this was all very well and good until humans came along and built their homes and roads in the way, and now they've had to build special crab bridges for all the crabs to walk over. Why did the Christmas Island crab cross the road? To lay its eggs for the next generation. Yeah, I think that only really works with chickens. So let's move on to our number 8, guys, which is ice fumaroles. Now, although these might look like some kind of ice chimneys, they are actually totally natural. They form in Antarctica from volcanoes beneath the ice and snow. The heat from them rises and melts the snow to form a cave, and when the steam continues to rise, it freezes to form these icy towers with steam coming out of them. They can actually reach up to 60 feet in height. Pretty crazy stuff, but we've got a lot more ahead. Number 7 now, guys, which is the sailing stones. This is an amazing phenomenon where stones seem to move by themselves across the floor in places like Death Valley. For hundreds of years, nobody could figure out how these things seem to move by themselves year after year with no evidence of human or animal intervention. Well, after 7 years of research by a team of scientists, it was concluded that under certain weather conditions, enough water and ice can form to float rocks across muddy valleys in a light breeze, leaving the mysterious trails behind them. 7 years they tracked rocks moving across the mud. That's why I love science, doing the job that no one else wants to. From 7 years now to our number 6, we're talking about the reflective salt flats. In southwest Bolivia lies a 4,000 square mile area of salt flats. Now, salt flats are formed when water pools evaporate and leave behind all their salt. This one though is particularly special because when it rains, the miles and miles of salt and water form an incredible mirror that is so big and reflective that governments use it to calibrate their satellites. It literally forms a perfect mirror of the sky and is way more reflective than any ocean. Next time you tell someone to go and take a long hard look in the mirror, tell them to do it in this one. Anyway guys, let's move on to our number 5, which is bioluminescent waves. Okay, this thing is mental. It looks like something made in Photoshop, but I promise you guys, this is totally natural. So what makes these waves glow like this? The answer is tiny microscopic organisms known as phytoplankton. These things are bioluminescent, which means they make their own light by turning chemical energy into light energy. Sometimes these little fellas get caught in ocean currents, brought to the surface and pushed onto beaches, and when that happens, the results can be spectacular. So we're at number 4 already, and I want to show you guys something amazing called columnar basalt. It might sound like a weird sciencey name, but it's actually a really cool phenomena caused by volcanic activity. The most famous example of this is probably the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland, and just look at those perfect looking pillars of rock. It looks like humans made them, but they were actually created by molten basalt intruding through chalk beds millions of years ago. Now, personally guys, I prefer the ancient Celtic myth about how these things were formed. Apparently the Giant's Causeway is all that remains of an ancient bridge built by 2 giants who wanted to fight each other. But we're at number 3 now, and it's time to get all creepy crawly with the spider web blanket. If you thought the thousands of spiders swarming over you only belonged in your nightmares or Harry Potter, then I'm afraid to tell you it's actually a natural phenomena. Back in 2012, the Australian town of Wagga Wagga was flooded, which forced thousands and thousands of spiders up into plants and trees, where they ended up forming huge webs together that completely blanketed some parts of the town. They stayed on these giant platforms until the water subsided and they could all just return to their home. So next time there's a flood near your house, guys, don't worry about the water, you should be worrying about the spiders. But now it's time to move on to our number 2, which is the flowering desert. This event takes place in the Atacama Desert in Chile. It's a very dry place and receives less than 12 millimeters of rain a year, but every 4 or 5 years it gets a higher than average amount of rain, and suddenly the barren wasteland is transformed into a blooming miracle of nature. Countless seeds that lay dormant beneath the surface for all those years suddenly got the rain they needed to burst into life. Over 200 species of flowers appear, which in turn bring lizards, reptiles, birds and animals. Soon though, everything returns to normal, with no sign of life until the next heavy rain.
And we're kicking off this list with the ghost patient. In this security camera footage from a hospital in Argentina, we see a security guard sitting at his desk. It's late and there's nobody else in the foyer aside from the guard. At least that's the way it looks to us. We watch as the automatic doors open, as if someone is entering into the hospital. Only there's nobody actually there. Or is there? The security guard seems to think there is, because he gets up from his desk and walks over to check this invisible person in. We watch him talk to what looks like thin air before allowing whoever or whatever it is inside. The guard later said that he had seen a woman walk into the hospital. She said she'd left something in the room she'd been staying in. The staff were of course pretty creeped out by the footage, especially when it was discovered that the name he'd taken down when letting the invisible entity into the hospital was the same name as a woman who had died just the previous day. Coming in at number 9, we have Miss Abigail. In this footage taken in a building in Houston, Texas, we see a security guard once again having a conversation with what looks like thin air. His coworker watching the cameras is filming her screen, completely confused by what she's seeing. Then she radios in to the guard asking who he's talking to. He responds by saying he's speaking with Miss Abigail, who's looking for Mr. Griffin. The coworker becomes even more confused now, saying, "You sure you're saying Miss Abigail? She died 2 years ago." She then goes on to say that there's nobody in the hallway with him. Suddenly it sinks in for the guard and he turns around and starts running down the hallway. Fair enough, that would probably be my reaction as well. Even if this is just a hoax, it's such a creepy idea. Imagine having what you think is just some innocuous conversation with somebody, only to be told, hey bud, nobody there with you. I also have this haunting image in my mind of how this supposed ghost looked once the guard was told he wasn't talking to anyone. Did Miss Abigail disappear? Or even creepier, and what I'm kind of picturing is that she just stood there completely still, staring blankly at him until he ran away. Next on the list we have the Poltergeist. In the security footage captured in a 200-year-old school in Cork Island called Deer Park CBS, we see a series of paranormal phenomena take place. First, a door at the end of the hallway seemingly opens on its own before violently slamming shut. Then a filing cabinet or locker starts rocking back and forth out of nowhere. One of the lockers opens up and papers start flying out on their own. A wet floor sign suddenly flips out. I don't know, it spins around and collapses. Whatever was causing this to happen was not in a good mood that night. Number 7, the hospital ghost. This is a story that was posted to Reddit by user Dr. Basio. Goes as follows. I work as a doctor in a hospital in the UK and was on a night shift that was particularly quiet. Some of the nurses were sitting around telling this story. A young doctor was running to a crash call. Our hospital is a giant L shape, with the front entrance being at the bend. A woman stopped him and asked him which way the exit was. He directed her and kept running. When he got to the patient, it was the woman who had asked him for directions. She had died. Apparently it got caught on the CCTV that the doctor stopped running midway down the hallway and gestured toward the exit while saying something to no one in particular. So supposedly, the confused spirit of this patient who had just died spoke to the doctor, who was racing over to save her life. Pretty spooky stuff. And hey, if there's any place where paranormal stuff like this is gonna take place, it's gotta be a hospital. At number 6, we have one that's pretty similar to the Miss Abigail video. This footage was originally uploaded to TikTok by the security guard in the video, Luis de Alvarez, who took it down soon after, utterly traumatized by the entire event. He was working as a night guard and was alone patrolling a floor he was on when he spotted an old lady. We watch as he walks over to who he believes is a person, although we can't see anyone but him in the footage. He begins talking to what he later described as an old lady who was saying she was lost. But another guard tells him over his walkie-talkie that there's nobody there. He's the only one on the floor. The guard was waiting for the elevator, but decided to just leg it out of there as fast as he could. We cut to another angle, and he's like running through the parking lot, and then just out of the building completely. Ran halfway across the city, I'm sure. Number 5, night shift. Oh boy, working alone at night in a big empty building. Just the thought of that sends shivers down my spine. In this story, posted to Reddit by True Denter, they described their encounter with a man who seemingly disappeared into thin air. I used to work at a place which was required to be manned 24 hours a day. Anyways, security is kinda tight. Bars on windows, multiple locked doors to get to where I am. They would give me work to do during the night, but underestimated how quickly I could get it done. So now it's getting to be the last third of my shift when all of a sudden I hear a door close. I look at the security camera and see someone walking down a hall towards my room. First I thought it was just somebody that came in ridiculously early, so I turn around and wait for them to come in, but nobody came in, and the hairs start rising on my back. Now this isn't a really big building, so I figure I'll find the guy wherever he is. I start checking offices and storage rooms, but come up empty-handed. However, I do see that a fire door had shut. I go to try and rewind the camera, but the digital recording is password protected and I don't know the password. Anyways, the whole thing freaked me out. The way the person was walking down the hallway, like a determined walk right to where I was. So I sit with my spine tingling for the last couple hours of my shift, and finally people start coming in. My replacement shows up and I tell her what I saw, and at this point I figure I must have imagined the whole thing. I'm told to go home, and the manager and the girl who replaced me would look over the camera. After getting home, I call my manager and ask what was on the camera. So they said that the video showed the fire door closing, but then the video froze for about an hour. The next thing it records is me reopening the door. Next up we have Son's Ghost. In 2019, a woman named Jennifer Hodge received an alert on her phone from her Nest Cam, which detects movement and sound, reading, "Take a look. Your entryway camera spotted a person." She'd been watching TV with her daughter and was about to fall asleep when she got this notification. They looked at the image, and it showed what looked to be a ghostly figure standing in their kitchen. Her daughter immediately said, "Mom, look, it looks like Robbie." Robbie was her brother and Jennifer's son, who had passed away 2 years earlier. But they both agreed that the figure in the photo captured by the camera did look exactly like Robbie. They immediately ran to the kitchen, but there was nobody there, and no signs of forced entry either. Hodge described feeling comforted by the situation though, saying, "I felt like he was letting me know he's happy in heaven." Number 3, the bike. This is another story posted to Reddit by user TJS252, who wrote the following. I used to have an apartment pretty close to my office. The office building was kind of on its own relative to the city's commercial district. I sold the apartment, and before moving into my new home, I left my bicycle chained to the building's bike rack. It was only to be there for a few days and at no man's land before I was able to move it into my new place. Anyway, one day in the middle of the week, I come into the office, walk past the bike rack, and notice it's completely empty. The building has a bunch of security cameras, and one more or less is facing the bike rack. I sit and watch the security tape with the IT guy. We're watching, see everyone leave the office the night before, see the bike, keep watching, then all of a sudden, poof, bike gone. We slowed the tape down, and it seemed like when you're watching a digital cable or satellite and the image gets garbled, literally it was bike there, then poof, gone. In the tape's timestamp, it literally happened in 1 second. I assume my bike got taken down to the upside down. Coming at number 2, we have the ghost attack. Here we see a security camera footage that looks to be coming from an office or apartment building. We see this guy walking down the hallway when all of a sudden something sends him flying back to the floor. You can see a very obvious dark shadowy shape appear, which then begins dragging the dude down the hallway by the leg. Luckily it doesn't drag him very far before disappearing though, and the man, now free from the mysterious entity's grasp, stumbles to his feet and starts booking it back the way he came. Whatever friend he was seeing, appointment he had booked, whatever it wasn't happening that day. Being violently dragged down a hallway by a shadowy entity kinda has a way of disrupting your plans for the day, I reckon. Now, as to whether this video is real or not, let me know what you think. I think it's a well done video, but yeah, I'm just not sold on the whole ghost thing yet. I want to be though. And finally, we have the nursing home Spectre. A security guard named Jay Brown was working the night shift at a nursing home in Chicago when he spotted some sort of ghostly figure floating past the front desk. In this video, he's watching back at the security camera footage as he films, talking about what he saw. If you look closely at the footage, you actually see some sort of misty shape floating around in the corner. You watch as Brown stands up, confused and terrified as to what he's witnessing. At one point, he even throws a book at the ghostly mass, but then he decides to just take a deep breath, calm down, and get on with his shift. You know, stuff happens at work. Rude patients, long hours, sometimes there's a ghost in the corner, you gotta whip a book at and then just get on with your day. Brown stated that whatever the strange entity is, it seems to show up every few months. We're gonna kick off this list with cold spots. So back in 2015, astrophysicists in Hawaii discovered a large, barren area in space. It looked as if everything in the area had just been like erased away, a giant black void where 10,000 galaxies should have been. It soon became known as a cold spot, and scientists at Durham University have a pretty interesting theory about this mysterious supervoid, that perhaps this cold spot is the result of a parallel universe colliding with our own, shoving all this energy out of that particular area of space, and that maybe we're just one bubble universe out of trillions. Of course, it's only a theory, but it's a pretty cool idea. And speaking of bubble universes, number 9, bubble universes. According to the theory of cosmic inflation, the early universe underwent a rapid expansion. In this scenario, different regions of space would have undergone independent inflation, creating bubble universes within a larger multiverse. So, shortly after the Big Bang, the universe underwent an incredibly rapid expansion, like a cosmic blowing up of a balloon. This is the essence of the cosmic inflation theory. The idea here is that during this rapid expansion, multiple pockets of space-time formed, each becoming its own universe with its own set of physical laws and conditions and who knows what else. And these separate pockets, like bubbles, could exist as distinct universes with a grander multiverse. So while we go about our lives in our corner of the cosmos, countless other universes could be out there, each with its own unique arrangement of matter and energy. At number 8, we have black holes. So yeah, black holes have been talked about to death, but not by me on this channel yet, so I'm excited to talk about them. Black holes are cosmic bodies possessing a gravitational force that is so powerful that nothing, not even light, can escape from their grasp. They're formed from the remnants of massive stars that have collapsed and are characterized by an incredibly dense core known as the singularity, and the event horizon, the boundary surrounding the singularity, which marks the point of no return, beyond which the gravitational pull becomes overwhelming and you're just getting sucked in no matter what you do. Now, as to what happens to everything that gets pulled into the black hole, that's the question. There are only theories. Some scientists posit that there is no other side of a black hole, while others theorize objects could be, maybe pulled into the future or across time, the quantum loop gravity theory. And then you have the idea that perhaps black holes pull objects in and spit them out in other parts of the universe, or maybe even another universe altogether. There are all kinds of theories, but the point is black holes are just an enigma. The mathematical universe theory. This theory suggests that different mathematical structures represent separate universes. As there are infinite mathematical possibilities, there would be an infinite number of universes. It suggests that our universe is made of pure mathematics, which is bad for me. I failed terribly in math in school. So like a giant cosmic equation, every aspect of our existence, from particles to galaxies, can be described and understood through math. But here's where the multiverse aspect comes into play. The theory proposes that different mathematical structures give rise to different universes, each with its own funky set of rules. So imagine an infinite collection of parallel universes where anything goes in terms of physics and math. In one universe, gravity might pull you sideways, while in another, it might pull you up. So there's a possibility that our universe is just one in an infinite amount. Number 6, the slap. So this one's a little bit different. This is a story posted to Reddit. So you gotta take it with a grain of salt. Who the heck knows if anyone posting stuff like this online is actually telling the truth, or maybe just confused about the things they saw. But skepticism aside, it's kind of a freaky story, and if the multiverse really does exist and can perhaps overlap at times, causing a glitch in the matrix if you will, then who knows. So the story was posted to Reddit by ZJoe12. So one day, a guy had been standing outside his apartment building smoking a cigarette. Unexpectedly, his girlfriend shows up in a taxi. He was surprised but pleased to see her, but she just scowled at him and then slapped him across the face without even uttering a word. And then she stormed past him and entered his building. He followed her to his apartment, questioning her along the way. Inside, she swiftly gathered her belongings, hurling a few items at him before accusing him of cheating, and then she said she never wanted to see him again and left the apartment in a taxi. So the guy's just standing there on the empty street, totally confused, scared, and sad because his girlfriend's just broken up with him. But just moments after the taxi had driven away, he was suddenly embraced from behind by the same woman, his girlfriend. He's very alarmed. He turns to face her, and she greets him cheerfully, totally oblivious to what had just gone on. The guy was completely confused, so he hurriedly rushed upstairs without even saying anything to her. He reaches his apartment and discovers that her bag is still missing. The broken items are still there. The door still wide open. Both of them found themselves utterly bewildered and shook. It seemed impossible that he would have mistaken her for someone else, especially since she was an only child. So yeah, twin theories are out the window. They took a look at the building's surveillance footage, and sure enough, the recordings confirmed his account of following a girl into his apartment, although the camera angles and video quality made it difficult to discern her face clearly. Now, if this is actually true, there could still be a rational explanation, but perhaps this is an instance of a parallel universe colliding with ours for a brief time. Next up, we have the simulated multiverse theory. According to this theory, our universe is just one big computer simulation. Yeah, this is the Matrix one. Maybe this is just a simulation, man. Whoa. And as to who could be running it, the possibilities are endless. Extraterrestrial life, humans from the future running a big ancestor simulation. You could go nuts thinking about this, and if there is indeed one simulation running, there could be numerous other ones running simultaneously, each representing a separate universe. Again, just a theory, one that is, as it stands, impossible to really prove, and at the same time can't be disproven either, so we just don't know, and we may never know. So that's a fun idea. And here's another fun idea. Philosopher Preston Green stated that maybe it would be best for us not to figure this one out, because if we were to definitively prove our lives are all taking place in one big complex simulation, the simulation might end. So once again, this one is just a theory, the daughter universes or many worlds theory. This theory is an interpretation of quantum mechanics and suggests that every possible outcome of a situation or event creates a separate universe. Imagine you're faced with a decision, like choosing between two paths. According to this theory, each choice you make would lead to a different universe branching off from your current one. In one universe, you might choose a path A, while another, you might choose path B. Alright, number 3, we have one of my favorites, the Mandela Effect. Oh yeah, everybody's groaning. We'll all heard of this one. I still find this one very fascinating though. The Mandela Effect as a strange phenomenon seems to mess with our collective memories. It refers to instances where a large group of people remember an event, a fact, or a detail in a certain way, only to discover that's not actually how we remembered it. The term originated from the false belief that Nelson Mandela died in prison in the 1980s, which numerous individuals vividly recall happening, despite the fact that he didn't. There are all kinds of famous instances of this for a long time, for a lot of people, myself included. Remember the famous line, "Luke, I am your father." Turns out it's just, "No, I am your father." All kinds of examples, and there is a theory that perhaps these collective false memories we have are actually that of some parallel universe that we've split off into, some other timeline and still have remnants of certain memories from the previous timeline. The human brain is weird though, and our memories are not the best source of information, so this one could be totally benign. One of them, for me, I always remember Pikachu. I always thought he had the black bit on the end of his tail, which turns out not to be a thing at all. But anyway. Next up, we have the Vanishing Road. This is another Reddit post, so highly questionable, but still interesting all the same. Posted by Reddit user Padjo95, the story goes as follows. About 4 years ago, I lived in this fairly small fly speck of a town. At the time, I had lived there for about 12 years, so I knew my way around. Our house was about 1.5 miles away from the nearest neighborhood. It was tucked away on a back road with the woods surrounding it. Every now and again, I liked to take walks with my little brother. We headed up the road and decided to try and find a new path or a new clearing that we hadn't discovered yet, when we noticed something a little shocking. Just off the road that led almost directly to the neighborhood, there was a brand new paved road. Every road in that part of town was a gravel road, so seeing an out-of-place paved road was pretty unusual. We came to the conclusion that it must have been made within the last few days, due to the modern but slow growth of the town. However, we had no explanation for how they did it so fast. We decided to explore it a bit. I remember as soon as we set foot on the road, the air became notably colder by at least 5 degrees. It was surrounded by some thick red trees that resembled redwoods, but they were too short and non-native to our state. We walked on the road for about 3 miles until we decided to head back due to it getting dark. At roughly noon the following day, we set back out to explore this place, only to discover that the entire road was now missing. When I say missing, I mean the trees that were cleared to make it had apparently grown back with no sign of the redwood-like trees. We even began to explore the woods once more, but only to find no sign that it ever existed. When we asked our parents about it, they said they knew nothing about any new roadwork being done near us. Alright, and coming in at number 1, Deja Vu. We've all experienced this. Maybe you're even having a bit of deja vu right now, this very second, because you've heard about deja vu so many times before. But despite how common this phenomenon is, there's never been a definitive explanation for it. The best scientists have been able to explain it is that we're just experiencing something very similar to something that's happened to us before, a memory deep within our psyche that we can't fully recall, so our brain just goes, this exact thing has happened before, your life, it's just one big time loop, repeating over and over again. You get kind of freaked out for about 10 seconds, and then you just go out with the rest of your day, hopefully, unless you just sit there pondering it for too long. But we've never had a definitive 100% true explanation for it, so of course there's all kinds of crazy theories. The common one is that it's a sign we're on the right path in life. Comforting, but not sure how I feel about that one. And of course the theory of the multiverse comes into play with deja vu as well. That maybe deja vu is the result of 2 parallel universes or more perfectly lining up for a brief moment. That a version of ourself from a parallel universe or universes are in the exact same situation, performing the exact same action at the exact same time. I like that a lot more than the idea that our lives are on this constant repeat and deja vu is just us having this brief recollection of the last time we were on this crazy ride. Yeah, I don't enjoy the thought of being stuck in a never-ending loop. So sorry I left you guys with that idea.
Number 10, backyard aliens. In late April of this year, Las Vegas police officers investigated reports of 2 unknown entities falling from the sky, and on the same night, a nearby resident called 911 to report something 100% not human on their property. According to authorities, a man called 911 to report 2 unknown entities in his backyard after he and his family saw a similar object fall from the sky. sky. The man described the creatures as 8 to 10 feet tall beings that appear to be like aliens with big mouths, big shiny eyes, and added that they're 100% not human. They were looking right at him and his family from their backyard, and he kept clarifying that it was not a joke and that he was terrified of whatever was lurking in the dark. While initially open for several days, the department has since closed the case. The family said officials returned to the home over several days to investigate. Representatives from nearby Creech and Nellis Air Force bases said they were not involved in the incident and suggested contacting the Metro Police. A spokesperson for the Pentagon did not immediately respond to questions regarding this event. So who knows what they truly saw? Number 9. Strange lights. Since the 1940s and possibly even earlier, there have been a strange light phenomenon observed in the Hessdalen Valley, Norway. The spectacle has a form of white or yellow light of unknown origin standing or floating above ground level. Between 1981 and 1984, the lights were observed up to 20 times per week, but have drastically reduced in frequency since then, about 10 to 20 times per year. Now, why the decrease all of a sudden? No one knows, and no one knows where the lights come from, but UFO enthusiasts took this as a sign that the valley was a portal to other worlds. Now, it wasn't just conspiracy theorists that were interested in this, as the strange bursts of light in the 1980s attracted physicists too, interest piqued by the idea of some unexplained natural phenomenon. In the decades since, scientists have determined the glow likely comes from air turned into plasma, and despite ongoing research and numerous working hypotheses, there is no convincing explanation of the origin of these lights, and it seems like it will always be a mystery. Number 8. Cities in the sky. On April 21st, 2017, the citizens from China were awestruck to see an image of a sky floating in the clouds. This phenomena had happened years before in 5 different locations in China, but there was still no clear clarification on how or why this happens. On April 21st, 2017, the citizens from China were awestruck to see the image of a city floating in the clouds. This phenomenon had also happened years before in 5 different locations in China, but there was still no clear clarification on how or why this happens. Some scientists came up with different theories, such as aliens attempting to cross from a different dimension, the second coming of Christ, or is it the image of the holographic test by the Chinese government? Another possible explanation is the infrequent weather event called Fata Morgana, where the light that passes through heat waves causes a duplication effect. However, that seemed unlikely because the image on the sky didn't match the skyline below it. Number 7. The Tunguska Incident. The Tunguska Incident was an approximately 12 megaton explosion that occurred near the Tuska River in Russia on the morning of June 30th, 1908. A massive fireball dashed to the ground before exploding about 6 kilometers above the Earth's surface, and this explosion slaughtered a lot of animals and completely crushed the surrounding forest. It even sent a hot shockwave for miles. Now, some scientists believe that the fireball was an asteroid. However, the biggest mystery in this event was that the massive explosion left no crater and no meteor material that can be found to be examined. Others say that the object which blasted into the sky was composed of ice, and that's why it left no debris, and the Tunguska event is the largest impact event on Earth in recorded history, though much larger impacts occurred in prehistoric times. An explosion of this magnitude would be capable of destroying a large metropolitan area. It has been mentioned numerous times in popular culture and has also inspired real-world discussion of asteroid impact avoidance. Number 6. The Phoenix Lights. The Phoenix Lights were a series of widely sighted unidentified flying objects observed in the sky over the southwestern states of Arizona and Nevada on March 13, 1997. Lights of varying descriptions were seen by thousands of people between 7:30 p.m. and 10:30 p.m. in a space of about 300 miles from the Nevada line, Phoenix, to the edge of Tucson. Some witnesses described seeing what appeared to be a huge carpenter square-shaped UFO containing 5 spherical lights. There were 2 distinct events involved in the incident: a triangular formation of lights seen to pass over the state, and a series of stationary lights seen in the Phoenix area. Now, this wasn't the only time the lights were seen there, as many reports of strange lights over the state in 2007 and 2008 also happened. This event has since become one of the most notorious UFO sightings in history. Number 5. Skyquakes. I didn't even know that skyquakes were a thing, so for those of you who don't know, skyquakes are mysterious booms from the sky, but are not thunder, and they are are heard all over the world. The mysterious booms sound like cannon fire rumbling down from the sky. Now they are commonly heard near water, occasionally rattling windows and plates. Now some have been explained by military aircraft breaking the sound barrier, but that doesn't account for reports of skywakes heard as far back as 1824. Now scientists have come up with a few likely causes. Near coasts, the booms may be caused by enormous waves crashing against cliffs. Sand dunes are also capable, through unexplained mechanisms, of producing sounds, including on rare occasions, large booms. Other options are meteors generating sonic booms as they speed into the atmosphere, shock waves caused by coronal mass ejections from the sun smashing into the Earth's magnetic field, distant volcano eruptions, far-off thunder redirected through the upper atmosphere, deep earthquakes making noises by cracking the crust, and gas belching up from underground vents beneath the ocean or lake beds. But the fact that it could be so many things without a definite answer is freaky. Number 4. The Belgian UFO Wave. The Belgian UFO Wave began in November 1989. Reports were filed many weeks after the event. Now many of the reports related a large object flying at low altitude. Some reports also stated that the craft was a flat, triangular shape with lights underneath. The Belgian UFO Wave peaked with the events of the night of March 30th to 31st, 1990. On that night, one unknown object was tracked on radar, and 2 Belgian Air Force F-16s were sent to investigate, with neither pilot reporting seeing the object. No reports were received from the public on that date, but over the next 2 weeks, reports from 143 people who claimed to have witnessed the object were received, all of them after the event. Over the ensuing months, many others claimed to have witnessed these events as well. Following the incident, the Belgian Air Force released a report detailing the events of that night. Members of the Waiver Gendarmerie, who had been sent to confirm the original report, described 4 lights now being arranged in a square formation, all making short, jerky movements, before gradually losing their luminosity and disappearing in 4 separate directions at around 1:30 a.m. Number 3. Forest Grove Sound. In 2016, a high-pitched noise was heard intermittently at night in Forest Grove, Oregon. The Department of Forestry determined that their equipment was not the cause of the sound, and the Washington Post described the noise as sounding like a giant flute playing off pitch, car brakes, or a steam whistle. NBC News described it as akin to a bad one-note violin solo broadcast over a microphone with non-stop feedback. It reportedly lasted from 10 seconds to several minutes at a time. The noise occurred near Gales Creek Road. Neither the City of Forest Grove Public Works Department nor the fire department were able to explain the noise. According to NW Natural, there were no problems with gas lines in the Forest Grove at the time. In February 2016, Andrew Dawes, a professor of physics at Pacific University, mapped the locations where the noise had been heard, although the results were inconclusive and did not suggest a single location. Throughout February 2016, approximately 200 calls were made to the Forest Grove Police Department, according to Captain Mike Herb, who said that most of the calls were suggesting explanations for the sound, ranging from frogs to aliens to Bigfoot. In late February 2016, the Forest Grove Police Department announced via Facebook that the noise did not pose a safety hazard, and that the police announced that they were halting their investigation until further information appeared. However, after February 2016, the noise was not heard again. Number 2. UFO Photograph. A photo taken in St. Paris, Champaign County in 1932 is considered one of the earliest possible photographs of a UFO ever recorded. It shows George Sutton, a local resident, and what appears to be a classic UFO-shaped object over his left shoulder. Skeptics say the object is simply a street lamp, but according to the folklore that surrounds this image, there were no electric streetlights along this road in 1932, nor are any wires or poles visible in the image. The photo is also intriguing because it predates the flying saucer craze of the late 1940s and 50s. It was taken before the alleged Roswell UFO crash in 1947 and 6 years prior to the broadcast of the War of the Worlds in 1938, when some people believed that aliens were attacking Earth. In other words, the person who took this photograph either captured a street lamp, a real UFO, or was way ahead of the curve in terms of pulling a good hoax. But I'd like to think it's a real UFO. And coming in at number 1 is Marfa lights. Yellow orbs like lamp-lit basketballs hover and twinkle and at times gyrate over the shrubby high desert ground in the shadows of the Chinani Mountains. They appear in the darkness south of US 90 between Alpine and Marfa. Journalist Michael Hall wrote about seeing the Marfa lights in a June 2006 story in Texas Month. Yellowish white lights that glowed, faded, disappeared, and returned in different places. Sometimes they changed colors, other times they split apart. I couldn't tell if they were 10 miles away or 100, the size of a car or a house. Now just about everyone in Marfa, and many who have visited have a story like that. Now, no one really knows the answer to these lights, but some believe it is the ghost of Apache chief Alasti, who allegedly haunts the area. Other claims it's space aliens trying to contact us, or the ghosts of Spanish conquistadors. Coming in at number 10 is the waterfall. In the Demerco Dry Valley in Antarctica, a bright crimson 5-story waterfall pours out of Taylor Glacier into Lake Bonny. Now, it looks like a gush of from a wound in the ice, but scientists have recently discovered the cause behind this mysterious phenomenon. The water that feeds Blood Falls was once a salty lake that is now cut off from the atmosphere due to the formation of glaciers on top of the lake. The water is preserved 400 meters underground and has become even saltier over time. It is now 3 times saltier than seawater and cannot freeze. Saltwater is also extremely rich in iron and completely devoid of oxygen and sunlight. As the iron-rich water seeps through the fissure into the glacier and comes into contact with the air, the iron oxidizes and rusts, staining the water a dark red color. Now, this is just absolutely crazy, but I'm glad scientists were able to find out the reason for this. Number 9, Crooked Forest. The Crooked Forest is a grove of oddly shaped pine trees located in northwestern Poland that is a protected natural monument. This grove of 400 pines was planted in around 1930. Each pine tree bends sharply to the north, just above ground level. Now, it's not all the trees in the forest that do this, as the curved pines are enclosed by a surrounding forest of straight pine trees. It's generally believed that some form of human tool or technique was used to make these grow or bend this way, but the method has never been determined and remains a mystery to this day. It has been speculated that the trees may have been deformed to create naturally curved timber for use in furniture or boat building, while others believe that a snowstorm could have bent the trunks, but there is little evidence of that. Good news is the site is open to the public and serves as a notable tourist attraction in the region, so if you want to check out these weird trees, you can. Number 8. Fire whirls. Fire whirls are also known as fire tornadoes and are absolutely a fire whirl is a whirlwind induced by a fire and often, at least partially, composed of flame or ash. These start with a whirl of wind, often made visible by smoke, and may occur when intense rising heat and turbulent wind conditions combine to form whirling eddies of air. These eddies can contract a tornado-like vortex that sucks in debris and combustible gases. The phenomenon was first verified in the 2003 Canberra bushfires and has since been verified in the 2018 Carr Fire in California. Fire whirls become frequent when a wildfire, or especially firestorm, creates its own wind, which can spawn large vortices. They're usually 10 to 50 meters, 33 to 164 feet tall, and a few meters several feet wide, and only last a few minutes. Some, however, can be more than 1 kilometer, 0.6 miles tall, contain wind speeds of over 200 kilometers per hour or 120 miles per hour, and persist for more than 20 minutes. However, fire tornadoes have been reported to grow as wide as 1,000 feet. Now, a fire whirl can reach up to 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit or 1,090 degrees Celsius. Yeah, that is hot. Now, these sound absolutely terrifying, and I mean, tornadoes themselves are terrifying, but a fire tornado? That's a big nope from me. Number 7, ringing rocks. Ringing rocks are rocks that resonate like a bell when struck. An example of this is in the stones in Ringing Rocks Park in Pennsylvania. Several early scientists became interested in the ringing rocks, however, none were able to formulate a credible theory on the ringing ability of these rocks or the formation of the boulder fields. Edgar T. Wary, a mineralogist and bonitist, became interested in the ringing rocks, where he theorized that the ringing was due to the texture of the diabase rocks and that they were supported by other rocks. In 1965, geologist Richard Faz of Lafayette College took a few of the rocks back to his lab for testing. He found out that when the rocks were struck, they created a series of tones at frequencies lower than the human ear could hear. An audible sound was only produced because these tones interact with each other. Although Faz experiments explained the nature of the tones, they did not identify the specific physical mechanism in the rock which made them. Now, there's been a great deal of controversy concerning the ringing ability of the boulders, and there has been an almost complete lack of testing to support the conjectures. Conditions such as size and shape of the boulder and the way that the boulders are supported or stacked certainly influence the sounds that the boulder make, but do not in themselves impact the ringing ability. Number 6, Lake Hiler. Lake Hiler is a saline lake on the edge of Middle Island, the largest of the islands and islets that make up the Recherche Archipelago in the Goldfields Esperance region off the south coast of Western Australia. Now, I'm going to state the obvious, it is particularly notable for its pink color. Lake Hiler is about 2,000 feet in length by about 820 feet in width, and the most notable feature of the lake is its pink vibrant color. Now, the vibrant color is permanent and does not alter when the water is taken into a container, which I think is pretty cool. Now, the pink color is believed to be due to the presence of the organism Dunalinia salina. I hope I said that right, probably not though. Now, the lake itself is safe to swim in too, however, it is not advisable nor allowed without previous approval by the Western Australia Department of Environment Conservation. Now, since 2002, the lake itself has been considered to be a wetland of sub-regional significance. Number 5, the hum. A constant low-frequency sound has been plaguing people around the world since at least the 1960s, from Canada to New Mexico, Scotland to New Zealand. Most who hear it say it sounds like a truck engine idling, and earplugs don't help block it out. Called the hum, it is so well documented that there's statistics about it. It can only be heard about 2% of the population, it is generally present indoors, and becomes louder at night. It is heard more often in rural and suburban areas, and it tends to be heard by middle-aged people. Some doubt the hum is even a physical sound, as in the fraction of cases it may be the result of psychology, with people focusing too hard on ambient noise. But for the most part, the hum appears to be very real. Many obvious sources have been ruled out, such as highway noises, industrial equipment, the electricity grid, and phone towers. Other theories of varying plausibility have been suggested, such as earth tremors, mating fish, power or gas lines, tunneling under the earth, wireless communication devices, and the OG, of course, aliens. Now, a study by geoscientist David Deming of the University of Nebraska suggests that the hum may actually be a result of very low-frequency radio transmissions used by military powers. Other research suggests that the hum comes from natural terrestrial or geological phenomena. It is a well-studied fact that animals seem to be able to predict earthquakes, so perhaps some humans have the same mechanism. All I know is if I had to hear that all the time, it would drive me crazy. Number 4, Milky Sea Phenomenon. For hundreds of years, sailors have reported randomly encountering a strange milky cast to the sea as far as the eye can see, but scientists have been unable to explain it or even know for sure if it was real. Now, in 2006, researchers were actually able to capture a satellite image of a Milky Sea, and several years later, experiments discovered the glow was likely from bioluminescent bacteria that attract fish in order to be eaten and survive in their guts. It's billions and trillions in these waters. But scientists still aren't sure how or why the bacteria gather in such large numbers as to be able to be seen from space. Like, that is just crazy. Now, in addition, their glow is continuous, unlike the more commonly seen dinoflagellate organisms that produce brief flashes of light. Number 3, Cave of Crystals. Cave of Crystals is a cave connected to the Nika mine at a depth of 980 feet in Chihuahua, Mexico. It takes the form of a chamber with its limestone host rock of the mine and is about 358 feet long with a volume of 180,000 to 210 cubic feet. The chamber contains giant selenite crystals, some of the largest natural crystals ever found. Now, as someone who collects crystals, I really want to go there. Now, the largest crystal is 37.4 feet with an estimated mass of 12 tons. Now, when the cave is not flooded, it is extremely hot, with air temperatures reaching up to 58 degrees Celsius or 136 degrees Fahrenheit, with 90 to 99% humidity. Now, this is comparable to the temperature records in Death Valley, but with much wetter air. Now, the cave is relatively unexplored because of these factors. Without proper protection, people can only endure approximately 10 minutes of exposure at a time. Now, the cave was discovered in April 2000 by brothers Juan and Pedro Sanchez while drilling in the mine. When the mine workers found it, it became an instant must-see for both researchers and tourists. Now, as of 2015, the mine had reflooded and the cavern filled once more with the water rich in minerals required for the crystals to grow. Number 2, the Blue Hole. The Blue Hole is a submarine sinkhole with a maximum depth within the hole of just being over 328 feet. There's a shallow opening to the sea around 20 feet deep, known as the Saddle, and an 85 feet long tunnel, known as the Arch, whose ceiling is at a depth of 181 feet, and whose bottom falls away as about 394 feet. Now, the Blue Hole is popular for free diving because of the depth directly accessible from shore and the lack of current. But this famous famous dive site is said to have the most diver fatalities in the world. Now, the blue hole itself is no more dangerous than any other Red Sea dive site, but diving through the Arch, a submerged tunnel, is an extreme dive that has resulted in many accidents and fatalities. The number of blue hole fatalities is not accurately recorded, but one source estimates 130 divers died during the 15-year period from 1997 to 2012, averaging over 8 per year, and another claims as many as 200. And coming at number 1 is a moonbow. We've all heard of rainbows, but what about moonbows? A moonbow, sometimes known as a lunar rainbow, is an optical phenomenon caused when the light from the moon is refracted through water droplets in the air. The amount of light available even from the brightest full moon is far less than that produced by the sun, so moonbows are incredibly faint and very rarely seen. Now, this isn't a new phenomena, oh no. Moonbows were first mentioned by Aristotle back in 350 BC, and there are certain parts of the world where you are more likely to see them, such as Hawaii. Just like daytime rainbows, moonbows need the light from the moon to be reflected and refracted by water droplets at certain angles to create a rainbow. Now, rather than seeing the full spectrum of colors, moonbows often appear to be white to the human eye. However, the colors are there, and long exposure photographs are a great way of capturing their beauty. Now, the best time to see moonbows is a couple of hours after sunset or before sunrise, and I think it would be so cool to see one in real life.
The quantum universe is full of some pretty mind-boggling phenomena. I'm gonna do my best to explain it. I've done my best to understand it, but let's just jump right in. Some of this stuff is nuts. One of the biggest mysteries scientists have about our universe is why there is more matter than antimatter. So first off, what is the difference between matter and antimatter? Well, matter is what everything around us is made of. Atoms, molecules, everything. Antimatter is essentially the opposite, with particles that have the same mass but opposite charge to their matter counterparts. Now, according to our current understanding of physics, when matter and antimatter come into contact, they annihilate each other. So if the universe had equal amounts of matter and antimatter when it began, they should have annihilated each other, leaving nothing behind. Thankfully though, that's not the case. We're surrounded by matter. We have stars and planets, entire galaxies. Me and you are made of matter. Antimatter is much more rare. Scientists find it in cosmic rays and particle accelerators. So this lopsidedness between matter and antimatter is a bit of a mystery. Scientists have been trying to figure out why there's this imbalance for decades. There are some theories, but none have been definitively proven yet. One idea is that maybe in the early universe, during the Big Bang, there were tiny differences in how matter and antimatter behaved. These differences could have led to a slight excess of matter, which then went on to form all the stuff we see today, but we really don't know for sure. Next up, we have quantum tunneling. So let's just pretend we have an electron trapped in an energy well. For the sake of this, we'll just imagine this well is like a valley surrounded by very tall mountainous hills. In theory, the particle would need enough energy to climb over the hills to escape the well. But that's not always the case. Quantum tunneling is this phenomena where particles pass through barriers that, according to physics, should be impossible to cross. Even if a particle doesn't seemingly have enough energy to overcome a barrier, there's still a small probability that it'll just tunnel through anyway. This phenomenon is pretty important in various fields like electronics and nuclear physics. For example, it's the reason why electrons can escape from atoms in a process called electron emission. But why is quantum tunneling such a mysterious thing, you ask? Well, for one, it's just not how things work in our everyday experience. Like we're not encountering objects spontaneously passing through barriers without any visible means of doing so. But at the quantum level, tunneling happens all the time. Another mystery is the question of why some particles tunnel and some don't. If we watch a pot of water on the stove, does it boil faster? If we stare at our fingernails long enough, will they grow faster? Of course not. I mean, that's just a preposterous idea, right? Well, not at the quantum level, apparently. The quantum Xeno effect is this strange phenomenon where frequent observation can actually prevent, say, an atom from changing or evolving. It's named after the Greek philosopher Xeno, who rejected the idea of space, time, and motion. And this phenomenon is named after him because it does show how constant observation can make it seem like an atom isn't changing at all. Even though, if it wasn't constantly being measured, it would have changed, if that makes any sense at all. Yeah, this took me some time to wrap my head around. Let's look at it this way though. If you leave an atom alone, it can evolve or change freely according to the laws of quantum mechanics. For example, it might decay from an excited state to a lower energy state. But if you keep checking on it frequently, like shining a light on it, measuring it, you basically freeze its evolution. I don't know, pretty nuts. Electrons can exhibit both wave-like and particle-like behavior in a phenomenon known as wave-particle duality. So imagine you're watching a tennis ball being thrown at a wall. Normally you'd expect it to behave like a particle. It has a specific position and you can predict where it'll bounce, but if we shrink down to the quantum level and throw an electron at a barrier, it doesn't behave like a neat little particle. Instead, it spreads out like a wave passing through multiple holes in the barrier simultaneously. This duality means particles can have characteristics of both waves and particles depending on how we observe or measure them. When we're not looking, they behave like waves, spreading out and interfering with themselves. But when we try to measure them, they suddenly act like particles with specific positions. This is kind of hard to wrap our heads around because we're used to things being either one thing or another, not both at the same time. And to make things even more confusing, observing or measuring the particles can actually influence their behavior, as we stated before. This is the famous observer effect in quantum mechanics. It's as if the particles know when we're watching and change their behavior accordingly. What does this all mean in the grand scheme of things? I have no damn idea, but if scientists are intrigued and confused by it, then so am I. Next, we have quantum entanglement, which seems to ignore the laws of space and time altogether, and if that's not baffling, I don't know what is. Imagine you have two particles that become connected, to the point that the state of one particle instantly influences the state of the other, no matter how far apart they are. Sounds crazy, but this is a thing. When two particles are entangled, scientists can measure the polarization of one particle and find it to be, say, vertically polarized, and then instantly know that the other particle's polarization is the exact same, even if it's thousands of miles away. It's pretty obvious why this is crazy. In everyday physics, something can only really have an effect in one general area, and nothing can travel faster than the speed of light. But with quantum entanglement, changes to one entangled particle seem to happen instantaneously, regardless of the distance between the two. This phenomenon has even led Einstein to call it spooky action at a distance. Scientists have tested quantum entanglement in tons of different experiments, and every time it holds up. But as for exactly why, we don't know for sure. It's almost like the particles are telepathically communicating. And quantum entanglement plays a big role in quantum teleportation. Teleportation. Yeah, I like the sound of that. We're getting science fiction-y now. So imagine you have two people, dude 1 and dude 2, and they want to send information about a quantum particle from dude 1's location to dude 2's location. Problem is, you can't make an exact copy of a quantum state and then send it through space. So instead of trying to copy the quantum state and send it directly, Dude 1 and Dude 2 use a process called quantum teleportation. The first dude and the second dude create a pair of entangled particles, like we discussed before. Again, now they're connected, so whatever happens to one particle instantly affects the other, no matter how far apart they are. Dude 1 then combines the particle he wants to teleport with his half of the entangled pair and performs a special measurement on both particles. This measurement changes the state of the entangled pair in a very specific way, depending on the state of the particle he wants to teleport. Next, he sends the results of the measurement to Dude 2 using regular communication, like a phone call or an email. This information doesn't actually contain the quantum state of the original particle. Instead, it's just some instructions for Dude 2 on what he needs to do next. Armed with the first guy's instructions, now, and half of the entangled pair Dude 2 performs some operations on his entangled particle, transforming his particle into an exact copy of the original particle that Dude 1 wanted to teleport. Basically, Dude 2's particle takes on the state of the original particle as if it were magically transported from Dude 1's location. Alright, what exactly is responsible for gravity? Well, in quantum field theory, gravitons are the root cause, the carriers of the gravitational field. The thing is, they've never actually been observed. Gravitons have just been proposed by scientists to explain how gravity works on a very tiny scale, like inside atoms. In the world of tiny particles, everything seems to be controlled by these tiny particles called bosons. For example, photons are bosons that carry light. Scientists think that gravitons might be the bosons that carry gravity. The problem is, unlike light particles, gravitons, if they really do exist, must hardly interact with anything, making them super hard to detect. So even though we think they might be out there, we haven't found a way to prove it yet. But if we ever do catch a graviton, it could unlock a whole new understanding of how gravity works at even the smallest levels. Alright, another one of the biggest mysteries of modern science is dark matter. Dark matter is a substance that makes up a large percentage of the universe, but it doesn't emit, absorb, or reflect light, which makes it invisible. We only know that it exists because of the gravitational effects that it has on visible matter, stars and whatnot. Scientists have some ideas about what dark matter could be though. One leading theory is that it could consist of undiscovered particles that interact weakly with regular matter and light, hence the term dark. These particles don't form atoms like the ones we're familiar with, so they don't emit or reflect light. Dark matter plays a big role in the universe's structure and evolution. Its gravitational pull helps galaxies form and holds them together. Without dark matter, galaxies would just fly apart because of their rotational speeds. Dark energy is a term used to describe the unknown force that's thought to be responsible for the accelerated expansion of the universe. The story begins with observations made in 1998 that showed distant galaxies were moving away from us faster than expected. See, before, scientists thought the expansion of the universe would slow down over time because of the gravitational attraction between galaxies. But these observations showed quite the opposite, that the expansion just continues to speed up over time. To explain this accelerated expansion, scientists proposed the existence of dark energy. Unlike normal matter and energy, dark energy doesn't interact with light or other forms of electromagnetic radiation, which is why it's dark and difficult to detect directly. But what exactly is this dark energy? Well, that's still one of the biggest mysteries in physics. There are some theories that attempt to explain it, but none have been confirmed. And we finish off the list with black holes. Is there anything more mysterious in the universe than black holes? Probably, actually, given the vast size of it. But from what we've seen, these things take the #1 spot for biggest mystery, especially when we try to understand them using the rules of quantum mechanics. At the heart of a black hole, there's this tiny point called a singularity, where everything gets squished into an insanely dense point and then seems to just disappear. And this is where our understanding of physics kind of breaks down. Quantum mechanics tells us that information is never truly lost. All the quantum information about an object can't just disappear. One of the laws of physics states the total amount of quantum information in the universe must be conserved. But it certainly seems like anything that falls into a black hole is just lost forever. This contradiction is known as the black hole information paradox, and this is where tons of theories spring up about exactly what happens to things that get sucked into black holes. Does an object's quantum information just become part of the black hole and then it just kind of grows larger over time? Is there some kind of void that the objects just exist in somewhere in there? Do black holes act as wormholes, transporting things to other parts of the universe? We really don't know.
Isn't it bizarre?
What's bizarre?
Space. phenomena.
Definitely. Today we're talking about some space phenomena that we might get to see in our lifetime, if we live long enough, that is.
Yep, and some that we missed, unfortunately. Unless you have been alive long enough, then you might have seen it.
All right, we're starting off our list with the passing of a really big asteroid, and it's going to be coming pretty damn close, and it's also flying by soon, in 2029. Apophis is a sizable asteroid with a diameter of about 1,200 feet. First caught NASA's attention back in 2004. It quickly earned a reputation as one of the more concerning objects orbiting the sun because of its close approach to Earth. On April 13th of 2029, Apophis will swing by our planet at a distance closer than the moon, coming within about 20,000 miles. That's crazy. Definition of close call. The name Apophis itself is pretty dramatic as well. In ancient Egyptian mythology, Apophis was a deity symbolizing chaos and destruction, so quite fitting for an asteroid that's coming so close to rudely crashing into us. Again though, Apophis will not collide with Earth during its 2029 tour. We will get a pretty stunning sight in the night sky though, visible to the naked eye without even needing a telescope. So, the naked eye. Apophis won't be flying by again until 2068. Some of us will be around to see it again, some of us unfortunately won't. Either way though, it'll be flying by at a much further distance in 2068.
Next up, we have a once-in-a-lifetime star explosion that's gonna happen sometime later this year, 2024, between now and September. And we will be able to see it with just the naked eye. For 1 week, it will seem as though a new star has appeared in the sky just east of the Hercules constellation as the white dwarf of the Coronae Borealis star system explodes, releasing an insane amount of light. This happens when the white star dwarf, which is the leftover core of a collapsed star in the Borealis, uses its gravity to pull material from a red giant, an incredibly large star with high luminosity and low surface temperature. As the white dwarf draws more and more materials towards itself, it begins to build on the surface of the collapsed star, causing its temperature to rise until the intense heat blows out a layer of the white dwarf's surface, causing an explosion that will appear on Earth to be as bright as the North Star Polaris, the 46th brightest star in our galaxy, despite many people thinking it's the brightest. That's actually serious. Not that serious, it's the star serious. The phenomenon will last for approximately 1 week, illuminating our skies before the most luminous nova of our time fades into its non-luminous state for the next 80 years before it all happens again.
We only have 36 years to wait until we see a spectacularly bright comet pass us by. Comet 15P Finley is set to make a close approach to Earth in 2060. Discovered in 1886 by William Henry Finley, it's a periodic comet that follows a predictable orbit around the sun. Comets like Finley are icy bodies made up of dust, rock, and frozen gases. As they approach the sun, solar radiation causes the materials to vaporize and stream away from the comet, creating these beautiful glowing tails. During its 2060 visit, Comet Finley is going to pass especially close to Earth. It's going to fly by at 4.6 million miles, making it one of the closest comets to pass us in the last 100 years. It'll be visible in the night sky, even with the naked eye.
Next up, we have the brightest supermoon of the 21st century, set to take place on December 6th of 2052. The name supermoon was first introduced in 1979 when scientists noticed that at certain times the moon appeared to be much larger and much brighter than normal. It was then determined that the change in the moon's appearance was due to its orbit, which is not perfectly round, causing the moon's distance to the Earth to increase and decrease depending on where it is in its rotation. But there's something else. Because space is just a bit unstable, the closest and furthest distances are not always the same. And that's exactly what makes the December 2052 supermoon so rare and so special. It will be the closest to Earth the moon has ever been in this century, 17,000 miles closer to Earth than usual. It will be pretty hard to miss considering its size and luminosity in the night sky, but just to be safe, like James said, I'd still mark your calendars.
Are you oddly satisfied by things forming into a perfect line? Well, you want to keep your eyes on the sky on August 28th of this year, because all the planets in our solar system will be lined up. If you miss this one, you'll have to wait till September 8th of 2040. Mark that down in your calendar. Unfortunately, I got something going on that day, so I won't get to see it myself, but I'll make sure to catch the one happening this year. So what exactly is this lineup of planets? Well, it's referred to as the Parade of Planets, an event where several planets align in the sky. Mercury, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and of course Neptune. Each planet can be seen under specific conditions and times throughout the night. Starting with the evening, Saturn will be the first planet to appear. It'll be bright enough to be visible to the naked eye. How many times do we say naked eye in this? Is there any word for naked eye? Just plain eye, just unaided eye. All right, it'll be bright enough to be visible to the unaided eye. As the night progresses, Uranus will become visible with high-powered binoculars. Jupiter and Mars will follow, and these will be easily seen with the unaided eye. By dawn, Mercury will rise in the constellation Leo. This will also be visible to your eyes without any equipment, but closer to the horizon, so it'll be harder to spot as the sun rises.
Next up, we have Comet West, one of the brightest and most impressive comets of the 20th century. Yes, unfortunately, this one has already passed, but it is so cool, I figured it was worth a mention. The comet was discovered in November of 1975 by a Danish astronomer named Richard West in photographs taken at the European Southern Observatory. Fast forward to February 25th of 1976, and the comet, made of ice and rock, first became visible by the naked eye. In the days that followed, the comet grew brighter as it became closer to Earth, soaring across the skies, leaving behind a luminous tail of dust and gas. While bright comets are not relatively uncommon, the fact that when Comet West reached its peak brightness, it became bright enough to study during full daylight made viewing its passing truly a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that we have all missed. But the photos look pretty cool.
In rare cases, depending on when you're born and of course when you die, you may be able to spot Halley's Comet twice in a lifetime. It passes about every 75 to 76 years. We last saw it in 1986, and we'll be seeing it again likely in 2061. So if you were around in 86 to see it, but young enough that you'll likely be alive in 2061, then congrats. Halley's Comet is one of the most famous comets in history, named after British astronomer Edmund Halley, who first plotted its orbit.
If you have any friends who are unhealthily obsessed with the Heaven's Gate cult, check on them in 2061. If you know, you know. Next up, we have the darkest solar eclipse of the century, set to take place on July 26th of 2029. For those of you who are unaware of what a lunar eclipse is and the difference between a lunar and solar eclipse, allow me to explain. A solar eclipse takes place when the moon sits in a precise spot, blocking out the sun, causing total darkness. A lunar eclipse takes place when the Earth sits in an equally as precise spot between the sun and the moon, blocking the sunlight from reaching the moon. While you might think this would just cause the sky to go black and appear as though there is no moon in the sky, what generally happens is that the moon actually turns red, because red rays penetrate our atmosphere much easier than any other kind of light. The upcoming 2029 eclipse is estimated to last 1 hour and 42 minutes, and at one point it will appear as though the moon has gone pitch black and is being surrounded by a fiery red ring, which sounds super cool and almost like an ode to Lord of the Rings. If you're into that, mark it in your calendar.
This next one is kinda sad in a way, somewhat like a passing of the torch. So in 2100, the North Star will begin to make its exit. The North Star has been, of course, guiding us north forever. It's not perfectly aligned with the true north, though, at least not always. Earth is kind of like a spinning top as it orbits the sun, causing its axis to slowly trace out a circle over a period of about 26,000 years. This movement affects where the North Star appears in the sky, of course. Currently, it's close to the point in the sky that marks the true north, making it a fairly reliable marker, but as the Earth's axis shifts, it gradually moves away from the true north. By March 24th of 2100, it'll be at its closest position to true north, aligning nearly perfectly. But that'll be kinda like one last hurrah. After 2100, it will slowly begin to drift away from the true north again, and in about 2000 years, another star, Gamma Cepheus, will take over as the North Star. So the star that once guided sailors and explorers for centuries will pass on its role to another.
And finally, we have the Earth eclipse, which is like a solar or lunar eclipse, except it can only be seen from Mars. That's right, one of the most exciting events of the 21st century, and we won't even be able to see it with the naked eye. The eclipse, which is set to take place on November 10th of 2084, is also referred to as planetary transit, and it happens when the moon and Earth both block Mars's view of the sun, making them appear as nothing more than bright silhouettes. As I said, we won't be able to see it from Earth, that is, but the eclipse is scheduled for 2084, and it only takes about 6 to 8 months to get to Mars, meaning we have about 60 years to either put some telescope satellites into orbit around Mars to capture an image of the event, or perhaps put ourselves on Mars to see it happening firsthand in real time. It's definitely possible.